48-hour art check, round 17.
All right.
We are back. It is Wednesday. I can't
17
remember.
rounds. That's
17
crazy.
rounds.
We're getting
I can't even remember how many weeks we've been doing this, but it doesn't feel like that many weeks. But 17 is a lot of times.
yeah, it's a lot. We're getting close to 20. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
21, we can legally drink. It's nuts.
Hey, there you go.
So, yeah. So, how has your progress been so far? Did you start last? Let's have you start.
Yeah, I can start. I've been doing good. So I was meeting with my mentor. Gaz asked a question. I thought I had explained this, but you know that thing where you explain it one time and a bunch of people, not everybody watches every video. So
yeah.
I'm in a creative incubator with ArtLink 212, and I've been paired up with Steve Leeper, who's a professional animator. And so anyway, so I meet with him every other week to review my story and go over pages and stuff. And it's been really good. And so I did that. With that has, every time I meet with them, my stuff changes for the better, but also deadlines. So anyway, so I've added some pages. I finished these two. So here's 3 pages. It doesn't look like much, but under challenges, I'll explain why. I typically black things out on the page, but out of necessity, I need to get a lot of pages done in a very short period of time. And so wherever you see X's, I will fill that in the computer. And then this has been added on the right. That's another page, and that is going to come after this page here, right at the bottom. She kind of, that second to last page, she falls off, and then I hit this other beat, and it was really weird. And so I'm going to hang there for a minute. And so I added this page in here on the right, where you just see her hat hanging there.
Nice.
And it's going to be kind of just a pause moment to kind of reflect on that character's full character arc, which is she's a bad person and this is a fairy tale, so she's dead now. And so that was, I finished those 3 pages, met with my mentor, and I have been just doing a little bit more story mapping and things. So that's kind of what I've gotten done. It doesn't feel like a lot as I say it out loud, but I'm gonna be finishing some pages really rapidly because of a lot of things that I've done, and redoing a couple, which I'm not excited about. I actually went through a big stack. These are all of the pages that I have completely finished that are not going into the book because they didn't work. And yeah, there's a lot of them. And a lot of that is just, this is my first book, and I finish things before I plan stuff. And so I'm going to stop doing that. Yeah, so anyway.
I like it, though. And I think that's I don't know, I think there's sometimes a really valuable lesson in just kind of like not being super precious and like you're doing, where it's like, okay, well, it's my first book, I'm gonna redo a couple pages because I didn't like how they came out or they didn't work for the story, and that's part of the gig, I think that's good, and then that'll make you plan more the next time,
Right. And there's a balance between I don't like any of the pages because I'm really hard on myself. So there's a balance between like redoing it indefinitely and never finishing the project, and this page really has to go, or whatever. And so yeah,
it's a fine balance too, but it's like it's good to kind of hit that balance. And obviously, you don't want to end up in that perfection balance where you're redoing the same page over and over and over again and not getting anywhere. But I think that's exciting. It seems like you got a lot done. So I think you definitely hit what you were aiming to. It sounds like
hit and exceeded. Yeah. So and then I've still got time after this, and I can talk about that in the planning thing. But I'm gonna finish another thing tonight. So
I think the way you're Xing the blacks too. The last time when we were talking about that, I was mentioning I don't do that.
Yeah.
Because it causes me to have trouble being able to see the balance. But it seems like the way you're approaching it is a way I could probably do it because it's for those big fill areas.
Right.
So you're still filling your smaller areas with black. It's just the areas where you just literally just be doing a wash over and over again. You're just going to do it in Photoshop and then probably touch them up later. If you
I mean, exactly. Like
I'm
filling in spots of black, but then where it's like this entire corner of the page is in shadow, I don't need to mark that out. Where I have done in the past, and I would like to, just because in academia you kind of have to do stuff like this. I'm going to stop touching the microphone. I would like to show it in galleries and stuff. When the book is completed, I'm going to show like the finished pages. So before it goes up in a gallery situation, I'll be blacking everything out. And
that's the way to do it.
But yeah, right now I need to get done really fast, like faster than I had planned. So, yeah. So how about you?
So I got the type pencils done for panel 1 of my book, and then I'm kind of halfway through the type pencils for panels 2 through 6, and I'll have those done probably tonight. And so I'm imagining by the next time we talk, I'll probably be working on the last panel.
Cool.
I'm pretty happy with how it's coming out. It's just slow and steady. And then I think one of my other goals was to get a little further on the video editing, and I ended up getting in about a minute in. So now I have about a minute of the animation for that, which is pretty awesome. So I'm feeling good about like the progress I'm making. It's not quite as much as I'd like, but I think that's just kind of the nature of the beast with this working on this kind of thing. But I think that's about where I was kind of hoping to be.
Yeah.
By tonight. So I just kind of hit it where I want to be, but not exceeding it, which is not ideal, but that's where I'm at.
But that's better than, missing or not doing anything at all. So
yeah,
it's still
and
any forward momentum is better than anything else. So
yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I've learned on this project is just by taking my time and doing it right, like the way I want it. It's going to save me time in the long run, rather than just kind of being like, I got to knock this out in like a day, you know. Because I do a lot of that at my job and stuff like that, but it's like this is meant to be like a passion thing.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to show that, and I think both of our projects are going to be doing that, just showing like a little more patience and a little more care and interest than a lot of what we do professionally. Not that what we do professionally wouldn't have care or interest. It's just like it wouldn't be able to afford us the time to be like, I'm going to render this house like the size of a dime,
Right.
Which is cool.
I'll tell you what, from here on out, if anybody wants me to draw anything with leaves, I'm going to charge a lot more. Because if I wasn't passionate about this book, it would have no leaves in it. I love it. I have to draw the way that I set the tone for this in the first few pages. I was not quite anticipating the amount of wrist pain and work of just rendering leaves and rocks and cliffs and trees and stuff. So yeah. So anyway, but yeah, that's kind of one of those things.
Bar high.
I did, which is good. It's taken me a few months longer than I wanted it to, but I'll have something I'm really proud of by the end of it. So
it's cool.
So yeah. So I agree. I'm kind of in the same boat. Like it's with client work, you bid and you do fit for purpose, right? And so I always try to over deliver. I always try to give them, just a little bit more than what they're expecting. Just kind of under promise and over deliver type thing. But if I don't have to draw a bunch of bonsai trees with individual needles because that they didn't pay for that, I probably won't. But in my own passion project, I'm gonna I'm gonna go big. So
Yeah, yeah, I love it, and that's great in kids' books, especially because like if you look at like a Sendak page or something, it's like there's
right,
always like all these little extras and little details that didn't need to be there, but they really make you want to stay on the pages and really look through it, and have a
right.
second read and stuff. So I think all of that, even the symbolism and stuff that you're throwing in there with the two different characters and how one's kind of rigid and themed with all that like hard geometric kind of stuff versus the organic, like fluid kind of flowing character. I think
Yeah,
that kind of symbolism and stuff that always that'll hopefully cause people to like really want to do a second read too. So it'll have a little longevity rather than just a one read through and toss book,
right.
So I think that's cool.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I was really inspired by the Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day books. There's like three or four of them. As a kid, I mean, as a little kid, before I was even into art or anything, they were black and white, and it was just fascinating how he was able to just render stuff with these tiny little lines. It was mesmerizing, and so it'd be cool, just to have a kid be mesmerized by something that you've done. I just think that'd be really neat. Because for me, it was like magic. It's just incredible. So anyway,
For sure.
yeah. So, so should we do? You want to do plans or challenges?
Sure.
Okay,
Sure. Which one do you
I'll
want
do
to do?
I'll do challenges.
Okay.
So we've already talked about this on here, but I'm adopting soon, and it just got real. So that's been a challenge in that it's just like mentally and emotionally very distracting because we just talked to the doctor of the expectant mom, and she is scheduled for a C-section on the 11th, which is about a week and a half earlier than her due date. And everything's great. Baby's healthy. She's healthy. Everything's going to go well. But like when I had, because my daughter is biologically ours, and like there was 9 months of like prep time. My wife got bigger. I had less of the bed. It was like slowly getting used to physically this person being in our lives. Whereas this is
Yeah.
like a light switch, and the whole time it's been like I've known that it's happening, but it's like it hasn't changed anything at all in my life until yesterday. I bought plane tickets. Where like it's happening and it's for real, and it is really distracting and really hard to focus on stuff. Also, my timeline of finishing the ink of this book before I head down there has now been completely shot.
Yeah.
And so I'm having to retool stuff, and I still want to get the inks done while I'm redoing pages and adding pages. I still think I can finish, but it's gonna be a pretty significant push. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's that is huge because I was thinking about it. I've even kind of joked with my wife about this because it's like that whole process of pregnancy. It's like it kind of conditions you as a dad
yeah,
to like start serving a lot because you really have to kind of like serve your wife a lot like
right,
before the kid gets there. So by the time the kid gets there, you're used to like I need this, and you're like boom, I got it here.
right. I'm
And
on it.
like
I've been doing this
it's
for
like you're
months.
conditioned to be like a servant
Right.
in a good way, I think.
Yeah.
And but like I was thinking, wow, if that 9 months, it's just like you're, it'll be interesting because on the other hand, it's not like you're going in blind and you
Right.
haven't dealt with the kid before.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fascinating. I can't wait to hear what a cool adventure. That's going to
Yeah.
be awesome.
Yeah. I'm thinking of maybe doing a sticker stint while I'm there, because we have to kind of wait for like a couple weeks, some indefinite amount of time before
Yeah.
the judge there decides that we're fit parents and okay to legally remove the child from the state. And so I'm imagining there's going to be a lot of downtime. but I can't really ink traditionally on the road just with my setup. And so I think I just might try to see if I can knock out, 15 or 20 stickers while I'm there and do a video every day. And so I'm sure I'll be talking a lot about it on here. But yeah, awesome. You're right. Pregnancy does kind of prep you, and we haven't had that prep. And I have a kid. She's 8 though, so it's been a long time. It's been 80% of my marriage that I haven't had to deal with an infant. So anyway, it'll be fun. It'll be interesting.
It'll be cool. There's all that stuff. I mean, the neat thing is, by the time I got swaddling down and stuff, it's like the kid's already outgrown it. Right. You're like, oh, I have this tool that I can never use. Like, I got really good at this thing. Yeah. So that'll be cool. Like, being able to be like, oh, I know this. I'm sure that first diaper change won't be as harrowing as, like, the very first diaper change.
Yeah. All of my friends make fun of me, though, because I keep like respirators next to the table. I can't. The smell is, no matter how many, I never got used to it. I always gagged. I did it, but I would tie stuff around my face all the time. It was terrible. I don't know how my wife does it. She's just fine with the grossest stuff.
Well, nice thing is those first few weeks it barely smells.
Right.
So, there's that. It's like the whole process just kind of eases you into the difficult stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. That's cool though. Is your kid excited about it?
Yeah, she's stoked. Like, she's really excited.
Have a little brother.
Yeah, she practices whenever she's around other kids at church or whatever, in our neighborhood or whatever. She practices being a good big sister, and yeah, she's gonna be great. It's gonna be fun to see her. And then she will also, she's also very strong-willed and stubborn, and so that there's going to be some clashing as well. She'll have to get used to that, which will also be really good for her. So
yeah, it'll be good for the kid too. Like, it'll be good for your son.
Yeah,
just to, like, get used to the world.
Right.
Have an older sibling to be like, here's some good music.
Oh, Mike says he's got 15 years between his boys.
Wow.
So that's you got me beat by almost double.
Man.
That's impressive.
Well, Mike, let us know if it was any easier on the second.
Yeah, I'm curious. Was that like shocking, or did it sort of come back to you, or did you have to relearn everything? Anyway, while you're answering, how about you, Josh? What kind of struggles were you having in the last couple of days?
So struggle is just time. I mean, like my wife got sick, so I was kind of on duty watching the kid. And then we've just had sickness floating around the house. Like, that's just how it kind of works when you're a family. It's like one person gets sick, the next person gets sick. And so there's that, just kind of budgeting my time. And, but I do feel much more kind of on top of it, like, than I did like the last time we were talking.
Yeah.
Where I feel like, okay, I got in the swing of this, which is interesting because we're really peaking in busyness at work. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of fascinating to just kind of hit my stride and be like, okay, like, this just means like an hour less of sleep, but I've got my schedule,
Right.
The only other thing is just like balancing with other projects, like the one where we can't talk about yet.
Right.
But like, that's going to be interesting once that kind of kicks into gear. But it's all good stuff. And that's something I always have to remind myself of, is like, what I do for a living is pretty cool. What we do for a living is really cool,
Yeah.
And it's easy to get lost in it and just be like, oh, like this, art rep or sales rep wants me to change this thing about my drawing, and kind of forget the fact that you're drawing,
right.
Yeah. And like how cool that is to kind of actually, like that's my job. And like when I was like younger and working like graveyard shifts at like an AM PM, I think I would have killed somebody who's complaining about drawing.
Right. Oh, this guy's paying me to draw. Yeah, I always ended up digging holes. Like, for the first quite a few years of me working, it was like no matter what the job was, even if it was in an office or something, we're like, hey, we need somebody to dig a hole. So anytime I'm like, oh man, this stupid client, I'm like, I don't have a shovel in my hand right now, so this is at least better than that.
And I mean, there's days where like digging a hole can be a really cool job, but it's like
Right.
if that's your everyday experience, that's going to be tough. You know, it's going to be tough on your body. It's going to be tough on your soul. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, it's cool that what I do, like reinforces my skills
Right.
on something I'm interested in. So
Yeah.
it's like when I get home, I've actually like developed and practiced some skills on the clock
Mm-hmm.
that I can then take home and put into my own stuff, which is
Right.
great. So it's like, you know, that's something that really hit me a couple days ago, and I just have to remind myself of, because like I said, I can have moments of getting kind of cynical or jaded about what we do, but what we do is really cool. So
Yeah.
just a thought. Had very little to do with struggles, but it's helped me through that
Right.
struggle of like just kind of where, you know, you're working and you kind of forget what you do for a living is pretty cool.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and I think, especially with you right now, because you're in the middle of like your busy season at work,
Yeah.
and if you're not familiar with the type of work that you do, a busy season at the place that you work it's not like kind of hard. It's like pedal to the metal crazy for months. That's exhausting.
Yeah, and every day there's a potential like ridiculous amount of money that could be lost if you like are off
Right.
your game. You know.
Right.
So it's like you're not only busy, but it's like you have to be firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Because if you misstep, like, you know, like for instance, on my own personal project, if I like draw something wrong and have to redraw it, it's not too big of a loss. Maybe it loses some time for me.
Sure.
But at work, that could be the difference between like a client and a lost client.
Right.
And so it's like, but there's also a rush to that, because when you nail it, it's like you feel
right.
pretty good. You feel like, yeah, we're pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, but like it is easy under that stress to kind of forget like, oh, this is like the best stress, because it's
Right.
like, you know, it's like I'm making cool stuff and it's fun stuff. And like most of the product, like the service of it is just for people that have good memories of places they visited and stuff, which is pretty cool. So yeah,
that's cool. So we've got a couple people in the chat, so I just want to say hi to everybody there.
Oh, sweet. Cory is here. I'm joking.
Yeah, I'm in the chat.
Ox is here. Mike is here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
I feel like, did we just do the romper room? Like, I see Billy and Susie and Bobby and Joey. Let's go through the mirror and dance.
What are your favorite colors, you guys?
Blank, 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 blank. Good. Sorry.
That was a false response. I love it.
Okay. Anyway, I can't remember what I was talking about.
So we're going to conduct this like Blue's Clues from this point.
Yeah, from here on out. Okay. Now I'm going to start quoting Homestar Runner or something, which that was okay. So plans. I hit the wrong button like a noob. Let me hit this button for plans. There we go. So plans for me in the next 48 hours. Tonight, I am going to finish. I'm going to redo this page, if I can find it. Where is it? Nope. Did I? Oh, right here. So this is one thing that my mentor pointed out, that I really appreciate the kind of cinematic nature of what he brings to the table. This is like a major beat right here where she's like falling to her death. But the rest of the book, we don't really see her anywhere other than like head on flat. And so like we always see her kind of like this. And so this shot right before that, where she's very it's like forced perspective. It's foreshortened. It's a very dramatic thing. I've introduced like hair where she's always had it like up in a bun, and I was trying to show her like unraveling, but it became very problematic because it kind of stole some of the thunder of this. So while I really like this page, I'm actually going to scrap this page and do a silhouette so that these beats hit faster and lead up to this, which is so it's more shocking.
Smart.
And so I'm going to try to do that, and then this page is going to be really hard. And so I'm going to try to get the pencils started on this because it will be kind of the bookend to these two, which are very complicated and detailed pages. And so basically at the start of the story, we have this big establishing shot. The camera swoops in down to these characters. And then the last page is everything is the same. He's still happy, but since she's mean and this is a fairy tale, she's dead now. And I'm going to pull out and to the right just a little bit. And so I'll shift everything and pull everything apart so that these kind of encroaching dark shadows that are kind of looming and pressing down on him, everything is going to kind of open up. It'll be the same scene, but it's kind of like I'm changing lenses, so it'll be a lot less compressed. And it will feel much more open. Yeah, and then the sun will be setting near the house to kind of show that, because every time I show their home, it's in shadow, it's surrounded by rocks, and then I'm trying to show that this is not a pleasant place for him. And at the end of the story, we're going to have the sun will have traveled across the sky, which kind of as happens throughout each of the pages, and it'll set with light and no more shadow in this scene near his house so that now he can be happy.
I love it.
And so I'm going to hit the pencils on that. And hopefully I'll be able to start and finish redoing this page because it's just a spot illustration and it's a silhouette, which makes it easier. And then I will also start the pencils on the other one. So that's those are my plans. I say that those are my plans by Friday. Significantly ambitious for the speed that I can do a lot of that detail at, and so we'll see how far I get. But I'm going to shoot for that. I'd rather shoot for that and miss it than aim low because I have to finish a ton of pages really fast right now. So I'll probably be falling short of several of these goals, but I'm intentionally trying to outstrip my normal pace.
No, it's smart, man. It's smart, and it sounds like almost necessary too.
Right.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, because I've got some meetings lined up with some literary agents, and I'd like the book not lettered, but the ink's done, so I can say, "Here's the story. Let me tell you about it."
Nice.
By that, and I won't have time to do it when I leave. So that's the plan.
Cool. That sounds like a good plan.
Yeah. So how about you? What are you planning on doing before Friday?
So my plans are to execute the rest of the tight pencils for the page. Mm-hmm. And hopefully at that point be at the point of transferring to ink. So
cool.
So like what I do with this style is I pencil it all digitally, and you can see it's like, it starts with like a cyan that I'm a little loose with, and then I go in and tighten up with a magenta that's on multiply so that it kind of just darkens and almost makes black the areas where they overlap. And the reason I do that, it might be kind of crazy, but it keeps a little bit of the looseness of the original drawing, and then the tightness of the refined, so that when it comes to inking it, I still have a little wiggle room to like decide on, I actually like that first line I had,
Yeah, so you're not just tracing, it's a little bit more fluid that way.
Sorry, I feels like it cut out. What's up?
Oh, I just said, so you're not like just tracing over your pencils. You've got some fluidity in the inking because you've got kind of that tight and loose going on at the same time.
Yeah, and that's specifically for this these chapters because of the fact that it just works well with this kind of style where it's a little naive and a little fun. So it's like I want to have fun and be a little naive with the approach of inking too, so that it kind of translates hopefully at the end.
Yeah.
And it's also just kind of a fun way to work. So what I do then is like print it out and then light box it and ink over it. So I just ink directly. I don't like transfer the pencils to pencil and then ink. That would be one too many steps. So that's the step I want to be at on Friday. And I'm kind of digging this page. I'm looking forward to getting into the further parts of this story. And it's fun to see it like kind of progressing and coming along, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's cool. I feel like that panel in the upper right-hand corner, if I put on 3D glasses from the 70s, that would make a rad poster. It's
yeah, that's
cool.
the interesting thing of working in this style. It does kind of end up looking like a 3D coloring book.
Right.
And actually, from doing that, I've realized like if I ever do like a little side project comic, it might be fun to do one that's like that just at the finish.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's way cool. Cool. So those are all 3 stages. I'm curious if Ox or Mike has any comments or questions, critiques, criticisms, compliments, other C words, or do you have anything you want to talk about for a few minutes before we sign out?
Well, just reiterating the idea of like when you're in the thick of doing art, remembering how cool it is that you can do art, and like, you know, for those of us who are blessed enough to do it professionally, to remember that, like how valuable that is, and like to remember what it's like when you're hungry for it, you know? Yeah. Because I think that that at the end of the day, like that's kind of the truth behind it. However, I also want to say, while you're remembering that, don't get stuck in it, you know, like, because for me, it's like I find myself kind of struggling between the two, where I'll be really stoked about the fun it is, and then there's a day where I'm not feeling it, and it's tempting to be like, well, it's so fun. Usually, today I'm not feeling it, so I shouldn't do it. And that's exactly when you fall out of the habit, you know, because you start making excuses and you're like, oh, well, it's like the working out thing. Whereas like a lot of the time when you do workouts, it's really fun and it feels great.
Yeah.
There's times where you get home and you're like, the last thing you want to do is that. And if you allow yourself to be like, nah, then that becomes a week of, nah. And it's the same with art.
My wife and I have this conversation constantly, because I didn't mean to cut you off, but like that analogy is perfect, because she's like a long distance runner. So she'll like in any given week run 20 or 30 miles over the course of a few days, you know, and I struggle to work out at all. And she's like, I don't understand how you can be so dedicated in one area of your life and so the complete opposite in the other area of your life. And I really don't know. I can't explain it. But what you just described, where like sometimes working out is fun, that is never the case for me. I have never worked out and been like, I'm really glad I did that.
Well, most of the time for me too, because I like, this is a relatively new thing for me, but there's these moments where I get in a zone because I've been doing it consistently for like a week. Yeah. Like it's usually about a week in, where you're kind of in a zone where you get home and you're like, I want to work it. Like you actually want to do it.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I'll feel good after. It'll be awesome. But like the art thing is so funny because it's the same thing. Like there's just days where you're not going to feel it, but it's really important to hit it.
Right.
Because otherwise you might not get back to it, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's a huge point. A huge key is that emotion and a lot of the stuff that comes with that. I don't know how you categorize that, but things that tend to be a little bit more fleeting, even inspiration. and motivation and things like that. If those are driving factors in your work, on your side hustle or your passion project or your comic or your book or whatever, you're never going to finish. It's gonna be super sporadic. It's like I know people who are writers. I'll tell a quick story. I was on a trip. I'm going to try to be vague because these people are still in my life. But
what's their name and address?
Yeah, so their name is, and they work at, no, I was on a trip and I had decided, this isn't something that I naturally do, but I had decided I'm going to draw whenever I possibly can on this trip. This is when I was working on a webcomic. And so we had some downtime in between meetings, and I whipped out my sketchbook and I started just drawing things in the room, like chairs, nothing terribly exciting. And this guy leans over and he said, man, I really wish I had that kind of passion where you just feel the need to just draw, And it bugged me. And the next day I kind of pulled him aside and I said, I don't feel that. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, well, the other day you kind of intimated that somehow I have this like innate wellspring of motivation to do this. Like, yeah. That's not how it works for me. Like, I decided that before I came on this trip that I was going to do this whenever I possibly could. Ox says, F yeah, chairs. So, but, and then he was like, yeah, because I really need to write. And I was like, just write. He's like, yeah, I'm kind of waiting for, whatever. And it was like, then you're going to just keep waiting. I've known him. Yeah. I've known him for years now. He's an incredible writer. He doesn't ever write because he waits for the mood to strike or the emotion to be correct or these things that are fleeting and not constant. And this is one thing that I constantly talk about is that motivation follows work. It doesn't precede work. Motivation comes because of work. It doesn't precede it. And so if you want to be motivated to do your project and the motivation to follow. And Mike is jumping in and talking about resistance. And this is exactly what resistance is you can not do your project because you really want to do your project. That can be what stops you from doing your project is like, I want it to be good. I want every moment of every line that I put down to feel like this euphoric, thing where the muses are just massaging me at my drawing table and there's all this inspiration popping up everywhere and all this stuff. And it's like, it is rarely like that. It's like that sometimes, but most of the time it's because I decided to do something and I did it. And then after I got started, it became motivating. But before I get started, I always mill around and don't do anything and waste time and procrastinate. And it's horrible. So yeah, I agree. I can't remember what you said to trigger that whole
No, it's perfect. So what's like something that comes to mind that's an example that I can think of recently was this was a couple years back, but we had this freelancer working for us, and they were acting kind of nonchalant. And they were like, someone here told me you have you've taught like colleges. Like, I'd like to teach a college class. And I was like, oh, cool, yeah. And he was like, well, so how do you go about doing that? It's a pretty easy gig, right? I'm like, well, you kind of have to get like an MFA.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, an MFA. And he's like, oh, okay, so like a couple more years of school and take classes. I was like, no, like you have to get like you apply for it and you can get rejected but when you get in, then you form a committee, and it's a little more complicated than just a master's. And then the guy, just like, the more I answered, he was just like, but his attitude at first was just kind of like, oh, well, that must be easy. You're lucky. You have it, And I'm like, dude, I put in like so many hours of work and like tearful nights, like literal tearful nights. And I'm not a big like crier, but I had nights where I just broke down and thought like, I mean, honestly, you probably haven't done a master's program unless you've like questioned reality at some point during the process. I almost feel like that's like part of it, but it's one of those things of like, and I'm not bragging about that as a thing. I'm just saying like it's hard work, and that's pretty much how it's done with that. That's the big trick. And then even that, like to go from that to like the interviewing process and getting through schools and stuff, it's hard. It's hard to even adjunct, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, so like whenever somebody tells me like, well, you're lucky that you could draw or that you have a proclivity to drawing. And it's like going to like, you know, a mechanic and being like, you know, you're lucky you like, I mean, I understand saying you're lucky you have gained the skills to work on cars because that's probably very helpful in your life.
Right.
That's a little different than saying you're lucky that you can magically do this stuff that you probably spent a really long time figuring out how to do and maybe like cut your hand a few times by like doing an engine wrong or whatever. I'm not really a mechanic. I'm just saying it's like it doesn't. Or like going to a doctor and being like, you're so lucky you know how to remove spleens. You know, right. It's like as if somebody was just born with the talent to like.
It's like the same thing as people saying, I wish I had the talent to play the piano. I wish I was talented like you. And it's like, do you? Because everybody that I know that plays the piano well spent hours every day of their childhood yelling at their mom as they were forced to practice for years of their life. They put in thousands and thousands of hours to get to that point. It's not like you just wake up and you're like, I can play the piano because God blessed me with his magic wand, with this talent. It's like, no, you kill yourself to get to that point. Like with almost anything worth anything. That is one of my biggest, if I don't like the whole term triggered or whatever, but if there's something that triggers me, it's where somebody says something like that. It's just like, let me tell you about what I've done to get to this point. Let me just describe it to you. So
I think that I almost want to wrap it up with this because like this is funny, but like the same topic that we were talking about, I was reading a kid's book to my kid. It's pretty well known. It's an Eric Carle book. And I think it's a perfect example of what an artist has to do. And I'm sure it's about art and the process of creating art.
Yeah.
But it's called, I think it's The Spider, or I can't remember. It's like The Spider and the Web or something like that. I'm going to forget the name of it. But anyhow, the whole book is this process of like a different animal walks up to the spider and is like it's like the cow comes up and goes, moo, moo, do you want to go like eat some grass? And the spider doesn't respond because the spider's busy spinning its web.
Right.
And every single page, it's a different animal saying, hey, come do this. And the spider doesn't answer. He's busy spinning his web. And then at the end, the spider catches the fly and has this beautiful web. And like, point being, it's just like, you know, I think it's a great book and it's a great example of kind of what it's like making comics because it's like you'll get calls from friends. If you're in my position, you know, it's like you work all day, and most of us are, a lot of us are, where you work all day and then you get home, and then when everybody else is like, hey, let's hit the bar, you're like, no, I'm busy spinning my web, you know? Right. Like, so that's kind of the type of thing you're doing on a daily basis, and you'd be doing that if you want to work on cars or you want to do anything.
Yeah.
And so when you're putting in that kind of work and you're kind of in the trenches where you're putting in like 3 or 4 hours after work, so you put in a hard day of work and you're putting in 3 to 4 hours, sometimes 8 hours, you know, late into the night, and then, you know, trying to wake up in the morning when you've slept for 4 hours instead of 8. And then you have somebody come up to you and go, dude, you're very lucky that you can make comics. I'd like to make a comic. And you're like, no, you don't. Like, I instantly get like almost furious because I'm like, if you wanted to make a comic, you'd be exhausted right now because you would have been making comics last night.
Yep.
And the fact that you're saying that to me when I have like red eyes and I'm exhausted and maybe lost some of my health because I'm trying to do this thing.
Shaving years off your life.
Yeah, it makes me kind of mad. But then again, you know, there's guys putting in twice as much work as I am.
Right.
So it's like I wouldn't go up to somebody and have that kind of presumption, you know.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, of course, fortune and luck to things, like to like the luck of the draw where you're born. You don't get to pick that, you know. There's a lot of things that do kind of set the stage early on, but when it comes to like a personal project like that, like if you have two functioning hands, okay, you can make art.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a lot of things where it's like, yeah. Anyhow, just rambling. But
and the thing about that you bring that up, I want to call out a couple comments in the chat here. Mike Emmerich says, "We are the spider people," which I think might be the best T-shirt idea I've heard in this week. Be a great inside joke.
Sticker stint.
And then I feel like, yeah, exactly. I might do a "We Are the Spider People" sticker stint. And then Ox says, remembers the bar fondly. I'm imagining Ox at his drawing table with like a photo of the bar that he looks at longingly before he starts his project for the night. But one of the things that's super fascinating about what we're talking about is it's not just that you say, okay, you've got to sacrifice your sleep and going to the bar and stuff like that so you do your project. But you also have to be okay with being really bad at it for a long time. Like,
yeah.
You know, and then getting to the point where you're pretty good at some things, and then you open your eyes and realize, this is what I'm doing right now. It's occurring to me the other things that I'm really bad at that I wasn't even aware of that I was really bad at, because I didn't have the cognitive ability to even comprehend what that was until I got better at the other stuff that I was bad at. And so you basically, not only are you making huge sacrifices, but you have to live with this mental game of constantly being a beginner at something. Because there's always something that you're like, wow, I can't draw faces, or the human elbow is beyond my ability to comprehend, or backgrounds.
A great analogy of that is like if you're blind, you know, it's like you might be pretty content with how you look, you know, but then if you start gaining sight, then you might like start noticing some things. So you have to like get a haircut and stuff like that.
Right.
And like, okay, I'm a little happy with how I look. And then it's like your sight gets better and you're like, oh, is that like a zit? Like, oh my gosh, I have like zits on my face. Like, what is this? Yeah. And so like the more you gain sight, the more clarity you get, the more you can see beauty, but the more you can see flaws. And so it's like that inevitably is the process of doing art, because you're learning how to see. And so it's like for me, like a perfect example that I can think of recently is when I first learned how to digitally color. I used to use a lot of black in my color and a lot of white in my color. And for some reason, I had this separation in my head between like traditional art and digital art. And so all my art would look like washed out and desaturated and like lens flary, you know, because this was like my first attempts at that kind of thing. And I didn't see it. I just thought, oh, this looks cool, you know, because it's digital.
Right.
And then it's like you really learn coloring, and you start learning like those CMYK numbers and stuff, and you start realizing like saturation and using complements and shadows and all this crazy stuff. And then you start seeing your old stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is terrible. Yeah. And not only that, then you start seeing the stuff that's out there that's better than the current stuff you're doing, which you may not even realized was great, like before you could really see color. And it's like that with almost anything. Like there's so many cartoonists now that I look at and I'm like, dude, that guy is like a genius. And when I was like a freshman in college, I probably would have been like, oh, that guy just draws stick figures, you know? Right. But now it's like I know enough about the brush, or like enough about, you know, the human form, where you're just like, well, that's actually like really hard to do.
Yeah.
And a perfect example of that is like the Mary Blair thing, where it's like, you know, a lot of people look at Mary Blair and they're, you know, I think now less so. I think most people kind of respect Mary Blair at this point, but a lot of people will look at that and be like, oh, it's cute little shapes all put together to make pretty pictures, you know, it's kind of folksy.
Yeah.
And then you like start learning design and art and flat color, and you're like, and trying to simplify forms like that, it's like, oh, dude, I can't. Like, she's too good.
Right. Or people like Mike Mignola, or you know, you look at that and you're like, oh man, he's no Art Adams, because he just like blacks everything out, and then you're like, Oh, that is an incredibly in-depth understanding of the different planes of all of those things, and
For real.
how to do that in two tones. That's
Yep.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I call it the deception of simplicity is people are people are like, oh yeah, that's super simple, and I'm like, yeah, you don't even know. You have no idea the journey that it takes to get to the point where you can make something simple. like anyway,
And make it look simple.
right. And because the trick is, and this is like, it's such a double-edged sword. If you can do simple well, which I can't in illustration. In design, I'm all right, but in illustration, I'm still working towards that. But if you can do it well, the result of that is that most people think that they could do what you just did. And if you do it poorly, it looks bad. And so there's this kind of weird payoff, but simple things will communicate so effectively. Like look at Bill Watterson with with Calvin and Hobbes. That is incredibly difficult gesture and line work. It is amazing what he's able to do with the expressions and the kind of disproportionate ratios of the human form, and have it feel childlike and real. And you look at it, and it there's not a ton of detail. It's just this real simple kind of fluid thing. And a lot of people, and I think this is the genius of it, kids look at that and they're like, I could do that, and they try it, and being kids, they feel like they've achieved this thing. That's great. And it really has launched. I don't even know many illustrators today that haven't been inspired by Calvin and Hobbes. You know what I mean? That are kind of our age. Oh, yeah. And yet many people look at that work and think, oh, that's really simple. And it's like, yeah, but you're missing the actual amount of difficulty and challenge and expertise and incredible knowledge and skill that has gone into being able to do that with just so few lines.
I always like to say, like a non-artist goes into an art gallery and they go to the Dali and they go, oh wow, cool melting clocks, what cool colors, this is so amazing, it's so mind-blowing.
Yeah.
An artist goes to an art gallery, they look at late Rembrandt, where it's just a sloppy, just piled on paint, where the color is just clear as day.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay, that's where I want to go.
Right.
Or they look at a Cezanne and those apples and the shadow on it and just get blown away by it.
Yeah.
They're usually not spending a ton of time in front of the Degas. Yeah. And that's just kind of the nature of it, because it's like you learn sight and then you can really appreciate some of the things that most wouldn't most people that I know who aren't art majors or whatever, even Rembrandt's a perfect example. They'll look at early Rembrandt where it was all fan brushed and there's gradients everywhere, and they'd be like, oh, that's amazing. And they don't understand, he didn't get the way he did just because of poor eyesight. He got the way he did with painting because he started really understanding painting later in his career, and so it's better. It's better. Yeah. It's a masterworking as opposed to somebody trying to learn. And I don't know, I love that stuff. But Ox just said, I don't trust anyone who doesn't like Calvin and Hobbes, and I'd agree. I can say for a fact, there's not one person. The NCS in LA is pretty big, and I've never met a cartoonist there who doesn't admire Watterson.
Yeah.
There's just certain guys that everyone admires, and that would be one of them. And a good telltale sign too is just look how many people rip them off.
Yeah, right. I'm not much for litmus test, but I would be totally okay with that as a litmus test. As a human being or as an artist, if you don't like Calvin and Hobbes, I probably don't want to know you. There's something wrong to the point where you're evil of some kind. I'm sure I'm sure there's some sort of sociopathic tendency or whatever, because there's that guy. I don't know. That guy's just magic. Now Garfield, right. I can see how that could be really controversial, but Calvin and Hobbes, it's just universally accepted as good. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we should wrap it.
Okay, so thanks to everybody in the chat. That was fun. I'm glad that you guys jumped in. Check out Josh's stuff at quarterlystories.com, and you can see the current pages that are up. You can also check out his comic on Tapas, which is formatted for mobile. So if you read webcomics on phones and tablets and the like, you can subscribe and get notified when he puts up new pages. I am Cory Kerr. You can check out my stuff out at corykerr.com, and I will be wrapping this book up soon. And so if you haven't, if you're not sure what's going on with that, go kind of jump into my Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube channels, and I've been talking a lot about that. And a special thanks to No Saboteurs for licensing the intro music to us. And we'll catch all of you guys later on Friday. We are out.
Bye.